Hello, I'm Verlaine Crawford. I'm really happy to be here today. This is my first in a series of information that I'm going to provide to you about what I see as the way that the world works. It's very interesting because I've had so many years on the planet to be investigating and looking at how our thoughts create our reality. It's been an incredible journey, and I really want to take you through what I have experienced and to help through stories and through information that I have received from guidance to help you to get rid of the stress that you're feeling in your life, to have a more peaceful and harmonious inner feeling within you, and to let go of the drama and the anxiety and the past information that is holding you prisoner, keeping you from being all that you can be. So I'd like to start by saying that I was born during the Second World War up at Mare Island Hospital in San Francisco. My mom was working on the ships there. And since I was born on a stormy night. And I grew up to the age of 3 in that area and don't remember much about that. But then we moved back to Iowa because both my mom and dad were from Iowa, and lived in a duplex in LeClaire, not LeClaire, excuse me, in Bettendorf, Iowa. And then my little brother was born when I was almost 4. And then we moved to the country, out to LeClaire, and LeClaire's on the Mississippi River. And our house had an acre of land, and we're looking at the river, and it had 40 acres of forest behind it. It was incredible. And my favorite times were going into the forest, and we played cowboys and Indians, and we hid. And then also this log was going over the stream, just a little stream. And I tell you, it was so incredible to just lay there on that log and watch the water move. It was beautiful. So I'm very, very fortunate that I had a very, a more or less peaceful beginning to life. I say the last part is that mom and dad weren't getting along very well. Anyway, when I was 12, I was going to go off to camp, and dad said, let's mow the lawn before you go. And so I had a medium-sized mower. Dad had, no, I actually had the small one that was going up on the hillside to kind of do the culverts around the driveway and stuff. And my dad had a medium-sized mower. And then my brother, who was about 3 years younger than I, almost 4, he was around, let's see, at that time, a little about 8 years old. He's driving this big mower that was automatic, and they hadn't put the guard in front of it. And by chance, I'm going up in a culvert. I couldn't hear anything really. I turned around and I walked into the mower. So I had cut my feet. My little toe came off and the top of my left foot. And it was a terrible accident. And it took a year. I was in a wheelchair and going back for surgery and taking skin grafts for my legs. And so it was not a very pleasant situation. And it took a while, as you can imagine, to get over it. But the worst part then was that the year later, when I was 13, my dad left the family. And part of it was because of the disagreements and the upset between my mom and dad. And then the accident had done quite the opposite of what I would have wanted, which was it accelerated that upset. And she was saying that he was to blame and all that. So anyway, 3 years later, when I was 15, my mom and my brother and I moved to California. And it was like a big adventure, to like we were getting in the wagon train. Not really. We were in a car, of course, and on our way. And we ended up in Northern California at Sassoon, which there's that's called Land of a Thousand Winds, and Travis Air Force Base. So mom had been working with the government as a civil employee, and so she got the job there. And it was very different because from Iowa, everybody is settled and they're there. And of course, when you're at Travis Air Force Base, everybody was coming and going, and there wasn't that any kind of sense of place. And at Christmas time, we got invited to go to Carmel to visit some friends of my mom who had retired, and they had bought a hotel in Carmel, and they invited us for Christmas. Well, I came down that hillside into Carmel by the sea. It was evening, it had been raining, and the streets were all glistening, and the lights and the little cottage type businesses were, and I thought I'd arrived in heaven. And it was even more beautiful the next morning with the golden beach and the sunshine and the charming village that was there. And I was pretty thrilled. So I developed a one-person campaign for us to move there. And I looked into the schools and what was happening with any kind of community center for children and so forth. And it was great. Everything was great. So we did actually move there. My mom rented an apartment there. It was like a 2-story house that had been made into two apartments, about 4 blocks from the beach. And everyone said we wouldn't be able to afford to go there, but actually the rent wasn't that bad at that time. I mean, it's so different in terms of money now than back in 1960. She was able to buy a house, and the house was 8 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms with a apartment that she could rent out to help pay for the amount of the rent, not the rent, but the mortgage. And I think she paid something like $40,000, if you can imagine. It was so cool. And it came furnished. So it had all this neat furniture of a big Chinese chest and dining room table. And it was just a really neat place. And we then turned it into a guest house to help pay for it because she wasn't making that much on civil service money. And it was a lot of work. I helped make beds and do all the stuff that you do to have a guest house. And then in the winter, we rented out one side to college kids and college boys who were going to, I think they were going either to the language school or to the junior high school there. Junior college. So we were able to make ends meet, and but she never had enough money. And was always someone who liked to have very nice things. And so she would spend money on clothes for me and for my brother. Anyway, that was high school, and it was neat. I mean, there's so much I could talk about taking my books to the beach and studying under the trees. It was beautiful. Just beautiful. And I loved it a lot. And so I graduated from there and then went to college and went up to the University of California at Berkeley. That was before Mario Saville, and so there wasn't a lot of upset going on at that time. And I majored in international relations, and I had thought in high school that I wanted to be an astronomer because I love studying the cosmic ideas and so forth. And I learned because I was part of the Model United Nations in high school. I went to UC Berkeley for the Model United Nations representing Uruguay, and I learned that I enjoyed people and talking to people and getting an idea across and helping them in that way. So what happened next? After I left the university, I came back home before I had graduated to help my family because my mom had broken her arm, and so had our dog, our little puppy. And so I went to work, and I vowed to myself that I would never quit learning, always learning. So let's see, some of the jobs I had there, I was working as a hostess in the hotel for the restaurant at the La Playa Hotel, and then did some, cleaning of rooms. And then I got a job as a waitress at Sambo's, which was a restaurant in Carmel. And I did many, many things, and ended up at the working at Port Ord in the hospital as a front desk clerk, helping people get to the right area. And if you wanted to count jobs, I have no idea what the number is at this time of all the jobs I've held in my life, and the consulting I've done for companies and so forth. But that's another story. The main thing I want to get to right now is I had moved to Los Angeles, and because I was interested in expanding and learning more. And I was living at a small apartment near Wilshire Boulevard. And I was in the elevator, and a friend of mine had gotten a heart attack, and I was very sad. And there was a man in the elevator, and he saw me and he said, "You look very upset." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, I was like you, only worse a year ago." And he said, "But a man came along and sat next to me and suggested that I make a list of the things I wanted and the date by which they would happen." So I thought, okay, that's nice. And he said, "But that's fascinating, is that everything happened before the date that I put on the list." I'm standing in the elevator, thinking in an elevator with this crazy guy, And he said, "I have to show you. I've got to show you." And he pushed a button in this rickety old elevator, and it took the elevator back down, which I've never seen before or since. And he said the first thing on the list was a Thunderbird convertible. And I have it. It's out front. So I followed him out front, and there was this beautiful new white Thunderbird convertible. I said, "Well, that's nice." And he said, "Get in. I want to show you." The second thing on the list is, I said I would be owning a building on Wilshire Boulevard. I said, "Really?" Now, at that time, there weren't a lot of stories about people being kidnapped and killed and all this stuff. So I got in the car, and I guess I thought also that I could easily jump out because it was a convertible. Anyway, it was only around the block to Wilshire, go up a block or two, and there was this building. And he said, "I now own this building." And I'm going, "Sure you do." And he said, "I'll show you." So he goes and he unlocks the door. I think this was like on a Sunday, so it didn't make any sense that he had a key. So I imagined he maybe was the janitor. And so he walks in, and I kind of looked around behind him, didn't want to get into the room with him. And he showed me this, kind of a thing where you put all these different little names. This is long before the computer. So he had what he had rented, all these different offices. And he said, "It's almost rented. I only have one more office to rent, and I'm moving to a penthouse apartment right over there." And he pointed to a building across the way. I said, "Well, that's great. That's just good, And so get back in the car, back to the apartment house, go up in the elevator, and I get to my room, and I slam the door, and I think, I'm fine. I got away. Okay. So I'm thinking about what he said, and I hear this knock on the door. I said, "Now what does he want?" So I open the door, and he hands me a book called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. He said, "Read the book and make your list." Well, I thought, why not? I'll make a list. I'll make a crazy list. So at this time, I'm 22 years old. I'm going to a fashion design school because I was in love with fashion design. Let me see this pretty color here. And I'm working part-time as a cocktail waitress in a very nice hotel downtown, and to make some money while I'm going to fashion school. So I start the list. And so the first thing I put on the list is that I will be modeling. This was in March. So I'll be modeling by April 15th. Right. Is that right? Did I do it that way? Let me think. Yeah, I think that's how it started. And then now I think the first thing on the list actually was that I would be on TV. Now that was really crazy because I didn't even own a TV at the time. And so the second thing was the modeling. The third thing was that I would be living at an apartment at the beach that I could afford. So I put it that way. And then the next thing on the list was that I would be driving an XKE Jaguar on my birthday, which is in December 9th. So that's what I did. And I put it in a drawer and just didn't think about it very much, right? So I'm going about my life doing the things I was doing. And about a week later, I get a phone call from a fellow that I knew. And he said, "How would you like to be on television?" Really? Yeah, they're doing a computer dating show, and you would be matched up with somebody through the computer. And I have to realize this is before the personal computer. So this was some kind of very, very advanced, right, for the time. And you don't get paid, but you get to go to Magic Castle for dinner. Well, I'd always thought that I'd like to go to Magic Castle. I thought that was a neat thing in Hollywood. So why not? So I was filmed on television and went to Magic Castle, which was really cool. I got to see myself on TV and I was going, no, not that bad. But anyway, none of the matchups worked. And so I thought, wow, that's really cool, you know? So I'm walking around the hotel and I overhear one person at one of the tables talking about tryouts for a play. And they mentioned the Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. Well, I had read the book in college and it had really touched me because it was about independence. It was about looking at society from a distance and about moving ahead with your own creativity and making things happen in your life without feeling restricted. So that was very impactful for me. And so I hear about this and I said, well, where are they doing the tryouts? And they said, well, Capitol Records. Okay. And I had such a feeling to call and find out about this play. So, and I just want to point out that this is one of the things that happens when you make the list. It's like a treasure hunt. Things start to come in the oddest ways, like this overhearing somebody else's conversation, or like somebody calling you directly. Okay, I mean, it's amazing. So I called up Capitol. I said, I'd like to talk to somebody who, is in charge of tryouts for the play. And so they could bring me to this lady. And she said, well, what part would you like to play? And I said, well, the lead. I mean, there really aren't any other women in the story that much, And she said, I see. And she said, you sound quite young. So, this Daphne is a little older. She's in her 30s, I think. And I said, oh, I look old. I look old for my age. And so I went and got a wig because I had just cut my hair like Twiggy, which in that time was really short. And, so I got this long wig and I tied it back. I somehow thought that was going to make me look older. And so I go for the appointment. at Capitol Records, which was cool, the brown building in Hollywood. And so we're talking, and she said, "What makes you want to be an actress?" And somehow out of my mouth comes, "Well, I really don't want to be an actress. I want to be a writer." What a way to get a job, right? Or get a position in this play. And I'd like to be a writer. And she said, "Oh, okay. And excuse me for a minute." So she goes out of the room and she comes back with this man. And it turns out he's the head of the communications at Capitol Records. And he said, "How would you like to be an assistant editor on our magazine, Keynotes magazine?" Really? I would love it. I would love it. Yes, I love magazines and I would love to do it. Yes. And so he said, "Fine, report to work next Monday." So I quit the job. I quit the fashion school, and wow, I was just so excited. So I started writing and doing things for the magazine and helping to organize it. And I became friends with the art director. Now, this is no length of time, really. It's only like a few weeks, right? And she says to me, "How would you like to model for the magazine?" I said, "Really?" So at the time they had, what do you call it? Record players that had a seat, and then you would open it up and there'd be the record player, but you could sit on it. And so there I am sitting on that. Now I'm going to sneeze. I wonder if that's something you need to edit. Oh, goodness. So there I am, in the magazine modeling. So I think to myself, okay, everything's happening in this list. I better look for an apartment. So I called my mom. I said, "Would you like to go for a ride? I'm going to look for an apartment at the beach." She said, "Oh, okay. Are you going to look it up in the newspaper or see, what's for rent?" And I said, "No, I'm just going to drive from Newport Beach north." And she said, "You're weird." I had a sort of a history of weirdness, but that was pretty good. So anyway, we get in, I drive to Newport Beach, and I started driving north, and I get to where there's like a bay, and I hadn't been there before, and it was like this pretty bay, and I just get this feeling to turn left. And I turn left, and the water's right here, the bay, and the street, and houses, and there's a for rent sign. I go to knock on the door and look at the apartment. It's a cute apartment. It's like a studio apartment. It has beautiful wood floors and a separate kitchen. And then the bed is on a little platform with a curtain. It was so cute. So you just walk outside. There was a little park-like grounds with a tree, and there's the beach. And I hate to tell you what the price was in those days, but it was $110 a month, which I could afford because now I'm working at Capitol Records. And so I have parties there with music from the bands at Capitol Records. Oh, God, it was cool. So the next thing on the list, as you might remember, was the Jaguar XKE. And I started dating a fellow who owned sports cars. Not a lot, I think 2 or 3. But one was a yellow XKE Jaguar. And he came to pick me up for dinner on my birthday in the yellow XKE, the yellow XKE Jaguar. And he said, "How would you like to drive my car tonight?" Who knew? That is so weird. And I did. And I realized that I didn't say I would own an XKE Jaguar. I just said I would be driving it. So that was the beginning. And what I did is I started telling everyone, like the first thing I'm doing on this series that I'm going to do about ending the battle within is to tell about making the list. And why? Because it helps you to realize that your thoughts are powerful and that your wish is God's command. What's that mean? It means that the universe hears what you're thinking, feels what you're feeling, and allows that to begin to create. Now, some of the people I told about the list didn't have it fully happen. And they would get it part way. One lady who just had horrible experiences dating men wrote that she was going to be married, but she hadn't dated like in, I don't know, 10 years or something. And she made her list. She'd be married by a certain date. Well, she didn't get married by the date, but she had some wonderful dates. She met some great men and one really good possibility. So by that date, the point being that it is what is stopping you is something inside of you, not the world, you, in this case, me. So that's how we're going to proceed. I'm going to talk more about this in the next video. And I want to tell you about my experience of this hunt, this adventure of looking for what is it that stops us from creating our reality? What stops us from moving forward? And what it is this a part of us is saying no. That part has a belief that says it's best not to have the desires of your heart or the desire that you want to have forward. It is always 100% positive about you not having it. In other words, it thinks it's helping you. And that's the key. I like to start when I'm doing seminars, I like to start with the idea that you think that you're captain of your ship, master of your fate, right? But it's a pirate ship and the crew is planning mutiny. That crew is a group of beings, parts of you, subpersonalities, that have taken hold of beliefs, and it's their job to keep proving over and over that their belief is true. You have another part of you that says, this one says no, this one says, but I would like to be healthy. I need to be wealthy. I want desperately to have love. And I love self-expression. Wouldn't that be nice to actually express yourself in a beautiful way? And this one is holding back in at least one of those areas. I call them the 4 cornerstones of life: health, wealth, love, and self-expression. So, my dear friends, I am very excited to speak to you about this. I've had the opportunity in the past to travel around the world to Japan, Hong Kong, Australia, Bali, and to France and Italy and many places in the US to teach this information that I want to share with you. And know within your heart that this knowledge of your ability to create your reality is real. It's real. And if you want to know what you believe and what you are thinking and what you've been holding within your consciousness, look at your own life right now. That's your feedback. Life is a feedback system to show you what you've been thinking, what you believe, and how it is to shift it will be so cool as you let go of these beliefs that are stopping you. Why did my first list work so well? I didn't have any blocks on it. I was on at neutral. It was like too silly. I couldn't believe that it could happen. Didn't have to believe in it. I didn't, but the key was I didn't not believe in it. I just did it. That's why they say that people go gamble the first time, they're always lucky. Why? Because they don't have any expectations about it. that's part of my story for you today. And I look forward to talking to you the next time I get on this video. And I want you to make that list. Make a list in your area of health, of your wealth, of your love, and your self-expression. What does that mean, self-expression? If you love to sing, sing that you're singing. Maybe take some lessons. If you love art, do that. Get a book on doing art. I did. At 72, I got a book on oil painting. I'd always wanted to do it, but I kept putting it off. And I did it. And I got some beautiful paintings. It was so fun. All right. That's my story for today. I'm sending you love. Thank you. Bye. Oops.